Welcome, everybody. I'm Rhonda Boyle, your SOAR online community leader, and we are here to bring you great calls that inform and empower you to move forward in your life through strengths-based development. Today, we are here to talk about veterans and ways that we can strengthen veterans as they transition back into life and into the secular workplace after service. I have an expert panel with me today to discuss the issues and challenges that many vets face when re-entering the marketplace. So first up, I want to introduce you to David Hammond. He actually is currently at the beginning of this transition. David, can you pop over? I'd like to hear from you about what you're experiencing right now.
Yes, Rhonda, thanks. So happy to be here and just excited about this call. I like you mentioned, I recently did transition out of the military into the civilian community. You said secular, so civilian is like what we like to say. And it's the craziest thing for me. Do you want me to give you background, or do you want to go into just kind of a little bit of transition?
Yeah, tell me, I mean, we understand that you've been in the Navy for a long time. You just share with us a little bit about your story and your background.
So I joined after law school as a JAG, and I was one of the ones that signed up after 9/11 after I graduated from law school. And so I went active in 2005 and served for 13 years active and just got out January. Had an amazing active duty experience, just loved the military and the opportunities that it provides. It really was an amazing time for myself and my growing family. I got to serve in Japan, served in Iraq, served most recently at Fort Meade at Cyber Command, and then transitioned out of there.
So it's different though, isn't it? Like all of a sudden, and this is one of the things that you face as you transition and you start to make this journey out of military service and into, pardon me, secular, not secular, but civilian life, right? Yes. There is a difference. Like you wake up one day and all of a sudden there's no uniform.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And it feels like.
So when I was first starting to interview for civilian jobs, I remember walking out and I had a suit on and I was looking for my cover, which is what we call the hat. You know, I'm looking for my hat. I'm looking for my cover. Where's my cover? I looked down and I realized I'm wearing a suit. I'm not wearing my uniform. And it was just one of those moments. I'm like, I got to remember this because I'm sure, you know, as months and years go on, I'm not going to look for my cover anymore. But when you first get out, or at the time I was still active duty, wearing a suit or wearing even civilian clothes sometimes feels a little bit weird, uncomfortable. So that's just kind of that is what I experienced. And then not only that, just like I mean, it's not just the uniform identity, but you're in the military, you're part of an amazing organization that's doing amazing things around the world. Every day you can look on the news or in the media and you see something about whether the Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, somebody is doing something special, and to be a part of that is really special. It's a wonderful thing. And I'm so proud of that service that I was able to be a part of. And so when you start transitioning out, you realize I'm no longer a part of this big thing. And whether you like it or not, that's where you get a lot of your identity.
Well, let's run up and talk to Jim Ball for a second, because Jim, you have had a similar experience. You were in the Army for a long time, leading infantry team. And so when you transitioned, tell us a little bit about your experience there, because I understand it was kind of similar.
Yeah, thanks, Rhonda. Yeah, very similar to what David experienced, where, you know, just what was normal in the service isn't what is normal in civilian life. Not anything major, but yeah, simple things like, you know, you put your cover on when you walk outside. Even today, when I walk into a stadium or a building, I immediately take my baseball cap off, and it's just out of habit. It's something that's probably always going to happen as long as I live. Yeah, so a little bit on my story. I was an infantry officer. I was in the 82nd Airborne. In the year that I separated from the service, or left active duty rather, in February of that year, I was running combat patrols in Iraq. In March, flew back stateside. April, I interviewed, did my terminal service paperwork, and May I left the service. June I was moved cross country. I moved from North Carolina to California. Started a brand new job in a brand new state, brand new home, new company, new people. Brand new, didn't know anybody, and just kind of ran with it. So in 90 days, I went from wearing the uniform in the desert in Iraq to a completely different place. Within 3 months. It was a whirlwind, a huge change, and it took a while for me to adjust and just figure out what the new norms were going to be.
Mm-hmm. And it usually doesn't happen that fast. Now, Kelly Shager, I know that you, with Joshua Development, you have worked with a lot of veterans, and so not all of them have this quick transition, do they? We need to take you off mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? Okay. You know what? Not everyone does. I was just listening to Jim talk, and I'm like, I'm not military, and I don't think I could handle that much change and transition all in such a short period of time. So, but you're right. It's not that fast for, well, I don't want to say most, but with everyone I've been working with, the transition has taken a lot longer, and they're still in the process of transitioning and figuring out where to go and how to get there. So I think there's a lot to Jim Ball's experience, and possibly, sitting down and figuring out, how did you get from point A to point Z and so quickly, and what was your plan of action? Like, there's so much value in that knowledge there.
Mm-hmm. There is. And so Jim Ball, if I remember rightly, you had a coach helping you through that transition. Is that right, sir?
Yes, very much so. I knew probably about 9 months before I separated that we had made the decision that, come the end of my active service, that I was going to leave. And in that time, I found a fabulous coach, gave me some great advice, started me on some professional development reading, started getting me to think about, what skills do I have now that translate into the business world. Worked with a team of recruiters to help me figure out what those jobs and those opportunities are that are out there for me. When you spend several years in the infantry, what you think is, I'm going to get out and get into law enforcement or government service, because I can't figure out how these skills translate any other way. And fortunately, I had some folks who helped me shift my perspective, start to see the leadership, the knowledge and the skills and the talents that I bring to the table that weren't readily apparent to me until we started to have those conversations and started to shift my viewpoint and my vantage point. So that was, that mindset shift, as well as the practical steps and the knowledge along the way. The other thing that I had that was really powerful was a great peer group to help me navigate as we made the steps through that program.
Sure, it takes a village, right?
Very much.
Very much so. So, J.W. Rayhans, I'd like you to weigh in, sir, if you will. Talk about one of the issues that I know that you've worked with some of the people that are going through this stage, is a redefinition of their purpose. Talk to us a little bit about that and with your experience, please.
Yeah, thanks, Rhonda. And I want to begin by thanking Jim and David and all of our other veterans and military for their service. It's really because of them that we have the opportunity, the freedoms, and the things that we get to do. And so there is a purpose, or what we call even like a new mission or a new next mission for those that have served. And it's one of the things that Jim mentioned is there are skills that are transferable. And even though it may be a mindset shift, some of those skills, those strengths, those talents, and the journey that they've been on equips them to where they have a very unique value that they can bring to really any organization. And so when we start looking at purpose, it's saying, okay, you know, and David even mentioned that uniform kind of becomes an identity. So how can we change that identity? How can we help them see that they've got a unique identity within them to help define that purpose and discover what that new mission is that they want to pursue now, that they get to create, that they get to define, that they get to pursue now.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that you're talking around purpose is how they're wired. Oftentimes, in my experience, people who are in the military really do have this internal compass of purposeful action. And so when they have this separation from military service, that purpose becomes a little blurred, doesn't it?
I believe it can. That might actually be a good question for David and Jim is, you know, does that purpose get blurred? Is there kind of a transition you have to go through to go, okay, what is my purpose?
Yeah, I know for me.
So, thank you, David.
Yeah, for me, I mean, the whole transition was harder than I thought it would be. And I kind of heard that in the past, and I knew there were a lot of veterans resources out there. And I just kind of thought, oh, that's so great that they're doing that for all the veterans out there that need that. You know, I don't, but you know, that's really great that they have those resources. You know, I'm going to be able to find whatever employment I want to do. If I want to go into academia, if I want to go into government, if I want to be a CEO, I'm just going to be able to throw my resume out there and they're going to be just, you know, asking me, you know, lining up to hire me. And that was not my experience at all. It was quite humbling to not get calls back and not get interviews. And then the interviews I did get that rejection of, you know, hey, we really need someone who knows the civilian law to hit the ground running. And, you know, I kind of do the little song and dance of, you know, I change a job every 2 or 3 years. I figure it out. I can do this, you know, like, no. and I can say, but for having a great coach, which is my wife. And
yes, I was going to say, you had an inside.
Yes,
you had an inside. Yeah, good.
Exactly, Becky.
Go ahead.
So she was awesome, and it was really just kind of helping me think about, okay, what are your strengths? How do you use this? My number one is relator. My relator went on overdrive when I started transitioning. I started talking to all the people from my life and asking about their career and the ones that I was interested in. What do I do to kind of get into that? And I mean, it was wonderful to just be reminded of how I'm wired and that I don't have to fit into some sort of mold of something else. I just have to be who I am and lean into that and go for it. And that's kind of what I did through the relator, through the arranger. When I was transitioning, I set up this huge workflow management so I could see all the jobs that I had applied to, and I was moving cards around. Where am I in the process, and who do I need to follow up with, and all that kind of stuff. And it was great knowing that this is how I'm wired, this is how I'm going to do it, and it turned out to work well.
Yeah, great. So listen, I want to tune in real quick to Jen Selke. Jen, you work with Zach Brown and his group with veterans. Tell us a little bit more about that, because you really do a lot of coaching with veterans, and so you're seeing a lot of these issues, aren't you?
Yes. Well, Zach Brown of the Zach Brown Band, for those that don't know, is a 3-time Grammy winner, has created a camp called Camp Southern Ground, and he serves military, children, Gold Star, White Star, children of veterans, as well as the veteran community in the off seasons. And that's where we're doing the Strength Finder in. We have a 5-day program. We bring veterans in. We do a 5-day program that includes things like the Strength Finder and a lot of different activities that helps veterans transition. And a big part is discovering their strengths. The big part of this program is helping them discover their strengths, find their new their new purpose and mission, and make a plan. And that's a big part in the work that I've seen in veterans coming through, is this idea that even just in interviewing, we talk a lot about, your strengths and identifying what you know about yourself, but then putting those on a resume, putting them on LinkedIn, and then helping veterans talk about that. Because, as I think David was saying earlier, you walk into an interview without your uniform, which, had all your all your ribbons, everything about you was basically your rank, everything was on your uniform. And you walk into that interview with nothing. And you have to be able to tell your story, and you have to be able to, brag on yourself a little bit. And that is one of the things that I think can be a bit of a hurdle for veterans, because that is not part of the training. Part of the training is you're part of the team. The mission is what is important, not you. And now you're going into an interview and you're the one that's important. And in being able to talk about your strengths and how those play out in your role in the military, that's the transferable skill, is your strengths become that thread that puts together what you did with your military service and what you're going to do now in the civilian world. And you can tie those together and tell that story through strengths.
Yeah, Kelly Shager, you really help veterans especially find the story elements and what they loved in their military job, and then transition into what that might look like in this. You help them find that vision, isn't that right? You have to unmute.
I did. I'm sorry. I thought I had done that.
That's okay.
I have.
Yeah, I'm going back behind you, muting you back up when you're done.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Go ahead.
I have found great success just hearing Jennifer talk. So prior to this conversation, I haven't had a lot of experience speaking with other coaches on what they're doing. I've just kind of been building it as I go, but I have found success in, number one, the veterans identifying what their top 5 strengths are, and then building that relationship. And being non-military myself, I think allows a new curiosity to ask them questions about their military career and really get into the specifics, and then listening for those 5 clues to talents, and then helping them identify how are you already utilizing your top 5 strengths. This isn't a new language. It's a new language to learn, but it's something you naturally have always done well, and help them recognize what they were already doing well. What did they love about that in the military? And now how can we take this moving forward, finding their new why, and helping to, asking that permission to brainstorm with them and kind of troubleshoot of some possible careers and potential companies that share the same purpose and vision. And it's definitely been the connecting key for me. So to hear Jennifer say that, I'm like, okay, we're on to something here. So it just, validates that, strengths are that universal language. It's not teaching them something new. It's just helping them recognize and that realization of their natural abilities being their strengths has been a huge highlight for me in the coaching with the veterans.
Yeah, so you're talking about language and communication. Jim Ball, let's talk about that for a minute, because I know that in the military, there are, you get used to language being a certain way. It's very, it's black and white, although it's in acronyms, but everybody speaks the same language. And then you come out and all of a sudden there's a shift in that. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, great. Yeah. I think to build on what Jennifer and Kelly were saying before we jump in there, I took a lot of pride in wearing the uniform. And when I had to take that off, right, there was a vacuum there. And one thing for me was strength started to fill that void in some ways, because it started to help me shift that identity and show me that, the things that I was doing in the service, the things that I was most proud of, actually started to come through on my themes. And I could see those in action. Quick funny story. After I took my Clifton Strengths and I discovered what my signature themes were, it was a couple months later, I found some of my old officer reviews, and I started to read through the comments and the feedback that I received, and I could see my theme shining through, my strategic theme, my activator theme. both the basement and the balcony there as well. Captain Ball was a little impulsive there, or a little impatient at times, but always had a clear laser focus on the task, and always got the mission accomplished. I'm like, oh yeah, there's my teams coming through. So it's pretty interesting to see. When we're talking about communication, yeah, I mean, as with any culture, they have their own norms and their own processes that they follow, a lot of shorthand. And a lot of industries we find, you do have those 3-letter acronyms, the shorthand, the lingo that you use. The military is no different. But when you transition out, when you say OER or NCOIC, people go, I have no idea what you're talking about. And it just became so natural that it just rolled off the tongue and you don't really think about it. And it took deliberate effort to not use acronyms and not use shorthand when explaining both in the interview setting and then just in general conversation. I guess one more quick story here. I was in one of my first PowerPoint presentations in my new career, and I was talking through one of the first slides, and then I go, slide, like expecting somebody like they did in the service to click the button and advance the computer from across the room. There was nobody to do that. That was me. And you don't shout slide a presentation in a professional setting. It just doesn't work the same way. So a little bit of learning, a little bit of school of hard knocks, I guess. I got some feedback that my communication style needed to change a little bit. And I was a little rough around the edges. And when I'm coaching other veterans, sometimes they get similar feedback, and we work pretty hard to make sure that gain awareness of that, because then that makes the shift a whole lot easier to do.
Yeah, I think that communication issue, though, when you have, when you're able to create a new language through which to communicate, it does make it a little bit easier and kind of levels that playing field, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of what that value that veterans often bring to the workplace. I can think of a particular client who was in charge, a military veteran who was put in charge of a department, and he quickly realized that they needed some structure and they needed to put some SOPs in place. And he brought that SOP, standing operating procedures. What are the processes?
I know, I'm just teasing because here we are using acronyms. They're just different, aren't they? That's so sort of to the point. But anyway, go ahead. Your SOP.
SOP. So he put some SOPs in place, and he did it in such an effective way that the entire department found incredible efficiency and outperformed their peer departments in many aspects of their business and their performance. And it made the whole team shine just by simply taking some of those experiences and those skills that he had in the service and putting them into place on his new team. So it was really powerful.
Yeah, wow. So Kelly, can you share with us a story of maybe someone that you have worked with that has had a similar experience where through that new story and that new communication, they've been able to leverage themselves into a really great situation? Okay, you're on mute. I always have to remind her.
Clearly listening is not one of my top 5. No, it is. So right now, honestly, I just, the veterans that I'm working with right now are really new to the coaching process. And so just recently, I just got so excited thinking about him. When the whole strengths coaching started, and Joshua Development partners with Vetdrenaline, and that's where our veterans come from. It's a transition process. I just lost my train of thought. Where were we? Help me out. So with identifying strengths, when I first kind of introduced him to it, he thought, well, you've got a lot of work to do. That's what he told me. He goes, to convince me that this isn't, just a bunch of hogwash. And I was like, okay, I get it, And what's so incredible is sending him in particular a list of questions to really think about and identify the answer to those. When I put it in writing and send it through email, I've noticed I mean, the turnaround time, so efficient. I can't even get back to the office half the time after coaching before, the veterans are already like on top of it and moving forward. And to literally hear him read his words of him listing his top 5 strengths and then using his own verbiage to identify how he utilized those top 5 in the military, I was so blown away. Because it's exciting, right, for them to have those breakthroughs and then to know that he is now moving forward with, okay, let's get rid of that barrier of, having difficulties writing resumes by connecting him with veterans organizations that offer this service for free and that can help them with the translation of language, but to really send them in with that confidence of recognizing how much value their military experience brings, and then them actually getting excited and wanting to take the next step of producing that resume.
Yeah, veterans really bring so much value to companies, and yet J.W. Rayhans, the founder of Joshua Development, come on and talk to us a minute about the fact that only 17% of employers say that they view veterans as strategic assets in the marketplace. So what's wrong with that picture coming up from employers? Because that's not right.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Rhonda. I think that there is a disconnect there between the statistic that you share and what executives or business leaders are looking for. Because if you think about it, what are the qualities that they're usually looking for in people? In other words, when they look at the people that they want to hire, what are some of the qualities that they're looking for? It's things like integrity or honesty, right? They want people with great work ethic and leadership skills. They want people who are good at critical thinking and problem solving. They want people that can work together in a team, that can follow when they need to follow, but they can also step up and lead when they need to lead. And so if we think about some of these qualities, not to mention also the quality of discipline, right? Just knowing that, hey, if there's a task at hand, if there's an objective at hand, if there's a goal to meet, then this person's going to have the discipline to pursue that and get it accomplished and get it done. So if we think about those characteristics, what type of background and of person do we tend to think of? If all I mentioned are those characteristics, we're going to think of people that have been in the military, professional athletes. We're thinking of these different professions or roles that they may have had in the past that would help them almost fine tune those types of characteristics. So yeah, the statistic, it's a disconnect in perspective, I think, or a disconnect in view of what value veterans and former military can bring to an organization, to a corporation. So I appreciate you highlighting that statistic, because there is something that needs to shift there.
Yeah, there is. And now, Jennifer Selke, I know that you, a lot of the veterans that you work with are actually from coming out, like post 9/11. That's been, well, how many years is that? That's a lot. It's been a lot of years, because that was 2001. And so they're still coming in for assistance. And is it that they're still struggling in that reinculturation, I guess, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, the range of people that participate can be your, 24, 25-year-old that has just transitioned out and is maybe finishing up a GI Bill and kind of trying to figure out what to go do, deal with the school. Whereas others that may have a service-related disability, some may be, have a high disability rating and may not have worked in years and are starting to connect that sort of isolation that they may be experiencing, because they may not need the financial resources for work, but they're missing that purpose. And that is a place where, helping people find like what value do you bring and where can you use that value is a big part. We have a number of companies that'll come in during the week-long program and talk about how they hire vets, why they hire vets. everyone from like Cabela's to Chick-fil-A, Home Depot. A lot of these companies are committed to hiring veterans. And so the disconnect is helping those hiring managers interpret what the veterans have done or what their, service skill might have been. But on top of that, their strengths are what knits those together. And I think coaches can really come alongside the veterans by, and like Kelly was saying, being a civilian, being in the civilian, as a military spouse myself. So I kind of have that, leg in that door, but being part of the civilian world, you're able to help translate for that veteran kind of what they're talking about, what they're explaining their, service to be, the strengths, and then you can help start to label their talents and their things that they did and help connect for them. I think that's where coaches play a real big value, because I see as the veterans come into this week-long program and I'm there and the other people on the staff are there to help make those connections with the strengths. But if a veteran doesn't have that coach that can say, oh, do you see what's happening right now? I had a gentleman in a program a couple of weeks ago at a competition in his top 5. And we were doing, low ropes, leadership type games. And this particular game happened to have 2 lines of people, and they were supposed to complete a certain task in these 2 lines. And the person with competition said, well, is this a race? And they were like, no, we're learning. And he was like, he just shouted back, if there's 2 lines, it's a race, and that it brought an opportunity for conversation later, because some people that may not be oriented that way may be off put by that sort of comment. So it really created a great dialogue around something that was a strength that may in some instances not be valued, and in others, for other people, it might. And so I think you need those real life examples to then connect the strength to. And I think coaches that can work with veterans to help put that piece together really make the biggest difference.
Yeah, and I think that what I love what you're talking about is, and what I see the need for is the bridge. Coaches can also be the bridge between the company and the veteran to help bridge that perception. Because Jim Ball, should we ever think that hiring a vet is charity or just good community involvement, sir? No.
No, not at all. That's unfortunately, that is a common perception that's out there, that, until people, if you've never served, if you've never had family members in the service, if you don't know, you learn about the service through stories or movies, and you got a certain perception out there. The easiest way to overcome that, I had a leader talk to me one time, and he goes, I don't mean to sound rude or indifferent here, but I really don't understand. Help me understand, because I see this as charity, and why is it not just something good that we do to reach out to the community? And we talked for about 15 minutes about what value veterans bring to the workplace, the skills and the knowledge and the experience that this team has been talking about so far. And in a 15-minute conversation, we were able to get this perspective and see the value. And then we, since that time, I've made it a mission in the companies with which I've worked to celebrate the diversity that veterans bring to the workplace through awareness campaigns, through training, through education, and through celebrating that diversity.
Wow, Bria Roper is chatting in the chat box. She said it resonates personally with her as a former missionary, that transitional roadblock was very similar. So I can see where that can relate. David Hammond, I want to ask you something because you referred to it earlier at the beginning of the call. You said that, first of all, you didn't feel like you needed anything, right? But you also said that there were so many resources for veterans out there. How does a veteran even, wind their way through that experience to get the help that they need?
Yeah, it's interesting. In every branch, I would say, is probably a little bit different, but Congress has mandated that every veteran go through a transition assistance program. They call it TAP class. And so it's, and then there's also executive TAP class. So for the higher ranks, so it's a little bit different than the 22-year-old getting out of the military after 4 years of service. So they have customized transition programs. Those are 1 week long classes. And then in that class, they go through all aspects of transition, from finances to job search to what you name it, they probably go through it. They even have a wardrobe consultant that comes in and talks to us about wearing civilian clothes. So I think the interest, I always kind of laugh at that because it had to be mandated on the military by Congress because there are so many people that were coming out of the military that were just didn't know what was out there and what to do. So Congress said, this shall not happen. Everyone has to go through this transition class. So Jim probably went through it. I went through it. And so in that class, they tell you about all these other resources that are available, all the companies that are veteran, that have veteran preferences, the different VA aspects. So the Veterans Administration has ongoing benefits for veterans. So there's those types of things that are definitely out there. But I would say, as we're talking about, kind of bridging the gap between companies and the private sector and military, I really think, Jim and I were fortunate to have great coaches and to be able to bridge that gap. I do think it's a two-way street. You got to explain it to companies and civilian side to say, this is what the value is for that veterans can bring, but it's also on the veteran to be able to communicate that. And that's why the coach is it's essential. For me to be able to say, to be able to lean into all those strengths and realize, yes, these are actually strengths. You can use them in your transition, in your job search. And it was critical. So as I'm listening to this, it's like, oh, if we could, somehow either get into this transition class where we can have coaches available for the veterans, or at least, get the word out there. That's what I think we need to do.
Well, and just to tell you how urgent and serious the matter is, in a recent study, it has been determined that 50%, more than 50% of veterans struggle to find work in their desired fields after leaving the military. So it's really, it's a more serious transition than I believe anybody knows. And I believe that you said it at the beginning. It was a lot harder than you expected.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Kelly Shager, come up and tell us about, you're working with two brand new vets now. They're newly maneuvering the way, and help us understand, is that true for them too? Is it harder than they ever expected?
It definitely is. When I was listening to David speak, one of the veterans I'm working with right now is in a similar situation. Now she's a reservist, right? But she has this desired field. She has 2 college degrees. She has so much drive and passion to work in this industry. Unfortunately, that industry, most of their events happen on the weekend, right? And so she's had some resistance as a reservist. And so right now we're trying to gather information on other organizations and companies that do this, but truly qualified, beyond talented, brilliant, driven, all the great qualities that come with, veterans, outside of the box problem solving, the adaptability, the leadership, and the list goes on. And also I'm working with another veteran right now who literally, he just doesn't know what he wants to do. And so, kind of sifting through all of that and really connecting with his military experience and what he loved about that, and breaking it down to the, okay, what does this mean? What does logistics mean in the grand scheme of things to a civilian? What does that look like? What did you do exactly? What all did it entail? And getting every specific detail, right? And then troubleshooting, right? And focusing on where to go next. So I think it's not finding, there's either they know what they want to do and they're having difficulty finding it, or they don't know. And that's also just as troubling, I would think, as, you know, if not more so than someone who knows what they're passionate about.
Mm-hmm. Sure can be. I would
As you were
imagine.
talking, I was like that guy that didn't know exactly. It wasn't that I didn't want to do anything, is I wanted to do so many different things that I really leaned into my strengths and my coach to try to help me figure out, well, what's the thing that really is just super exciting and that I need to go for. And so that was helpful in that, but I can totally relate to that, Kelly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So let's go through as we wrap up here with just a last word from each of you. And I just want to thank you for being my guest today. Let's hear from Dr. Jennifer Selke today. Jennifer, just anything, last encouragement or anything else that you can share for veterans today as we close up?
Yeah, I think the big thing we want to make sure is to consider how important having a purpose and a mission is for everybody, regardless of your veteran status, and the role that coaches can play in help understanding who you are, and then connecting you then to resources that can help you find out where to use that purpose. Because I think a coach provides that perspective that you may not have. And, you know, we're losing 22 veterans, first responders a day to suicide, you know, and there's a lot of things that play into that, but isolation and not having a purpose is a big part of that. So anytime a coach can come alongside that veteran to be that bridge person to help make connections, but also explain their value and worth in a way that they may not have heard somebody talk about them before, is life-changing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. J.W. Rayhans, you work too with purpose. Let's hear last words from you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Rhonda. Thanks for organizing all this so that we had this opportunity. You mentioned purpose, we mentioned mission. Here's what I would leave everybody with. One is the talents that you have, the journey that you've been on, puts you in a position to make a major contribution. And David mentioned the importance of what it felt like to be a part of something big, right? To be a part of something beyond yourself. And that's what they still have the opportunity to do. That's what any veteran, any former military, they still have that opportunity to be a part of something big and make a major contribution in amazing ways. So any coaches, we want to help you do that. Let's make that happen.
Absolutely. We need everything you've got, Jim Ball, don't we, for every veteran out there, sir? Last words.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the last thing that I'd like to share is, you know, in the military, if you want a 20-year career, it's virtually mapped out for you. You can take that path and you've got the jobs that you need to take. You've got the lateral assignments. You've got that ladder and that growth and that path that's going to take you on a 20-plus year career. When you step out into the civilian world, it doesn't work that way. You know, there's some structure, there's some guidelines, but really it's what you make of it. Having a coach is not a soft thing. It's not a nice to have. It's not something that makes you just feel better about yourself or have you talk about your feelings. No, this is about giving you a guide, giving you support, helping somebody to lay the groundwork and provide those guideposts and that roadmap that's going to help you as you co-create that pathway in that new career moving forward. It's good to have somebody there who's in your corner there to support you with real, tangible support and knowledge that's going to help you guide your way.
Absolutely. And I love how that has guided your mission with Strengths Now. Thank you so much for joining me, sir. Kelly Shager, come say last words to our audience here. Encouragement for our veterans. And you've got to take yourself off mute, dear. I love you.
Are you feeling my mother's pain now? So, you know, for those coaches that are out there who are working with veterans, I have found so much opportunity, the veterans will guide you if you just keep asking questions, and not just and questions to truly understand. Think of it almost as problem solving, troubleshooting. It's their opportunity to shine, to get down right to the, like, where is this all coming from? Why do you get so excited about this? And really shedding lights on their strengths and helping them realize the unique value that they bring to the civilian workforce. Truly, for the veterans out there, I applaud you and thank you, not just for what you've done, but for allowing us coaches to jump into your circle and into your world for a second, and allowing us, the pleasure to work with and help you, and stay focused. And what Jim Ball said, it's not a soft thing, and we are not therapists. We're simply here to help ask those questions that will make you think about things perhaps you haven't had the opportunity to think about before, that might bring some clarity. So thank you, Rhonda, for having me today. Thank you, Jim and David and Jennifer and JW for, I learned so much today just listening to each different perspective, and I value that greatly.
Thank you. Thank you. I've learned a lot too. David Hammond, last word, sir. You're the Nikki new guy on the block.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
we're all rooting for you. And I can tell you've got a whole panel of coaches here, even though we
Exactly.
do that.
I'm the odd man out. I'm not the coach on the panel, but I like to play one on TV. No. As I was thinking, words of wisdom, I think the military is a wonderful organization. Department of Defense, wonderful organization, but the culture of the military is not a strengths-based culture. There are pockets, and I'm not saying there's nobody that cares about strengths in the military, because there are, and it's changing. And there's some flag level leadership. Flag levels are general officers or admirals that care about this type of thing. But generally across the board, it is you charge that hill. It's one side. It's being well-rounded. It is being able to plug and play. It's all the types of things that are just, it's not the same culture as a strengths-based culture. And so I would say for anyone, so for anyone in the military, I'd say, the military can change, because I think it would be an even better organization if it was a strengths-based culture, because you can charge that hill even though you have your own strengths, and you're going to be better at charging that hill with your strengths, figuratively speaking, and maybe literally. But I think from someone who's kind of lived this, I think it's all about self-awareness. And when you can, the more that I understood my strengths, the more I was comfortable, and the more I leaned into it. And it just gives you this confidence to go into things. And when you get rejected, you realize, it probably wasn't the right fit anyway, because I want to be in an organization that values my strengths and what I offer to the team. You're not going to be the best fit on every team. And that's something through strengths you can just kind of get a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for weighing in. And of course, any of us is willing to help you. Yvonne Salfinger has tuned in. She says, thanks for sharing the information and for your service. And I agree. And she says she has brothers-in-law in the Army and recently retired Navy, and is the daughter of a 20-year-old Air Force veteran who retired in the mid-1970s. She's not sure what help he had when he retired, but she wishes he had this kind of information. And that's exactly what we are hoping to accomplish, is just to bring you an awareness of how coaches can really help veterans in this very tenuous transition period that they have to go through as they move from military service and into civilian life and into the marketplace, as they work to find their footing. And coaches can certainly help. We have had some amazing coaches with us today on our panel, and I will be connecting you to them when I send out the replay. I will link you to them all. You'll be able to find them. And I encourage you to reach out and talk with them, if you need some help or you'd like some guidance, you want a discovery call, I know each and every one of them would be willing and happy to serve you. And if you would like to tune in later for more events, you can find us at soar.com, actually at events.soar.com, where we offer new training and conversations that matter around things that can be positively impacted through coaching. We have the greatest coaches in the world on soar.com. So if you're shopping, if you're a veteran and you need help, or if you need help with your marriage or your team, any of that, we have coaches ready to serve you. I'm Rhonda Boyle. Thank you again for joining me. And I'm your online community leader and look forward to serving you in the future. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Rhonda.